I was hired by Prince to help record something he said the world was never meant to see. Hidden 3 stories beneath Paisley Park. We watched through silent monitors as Clive Davis, Diddy, and a circle of celebrities performed a ritual so disturbing it couldn't be explained, only witnessed. The Book of the Damned, oil, chanting without mouths moving. Something ancient was being fed, not summoned. And when Prince told me, "This is my final protest," I didn't know it would be his last words to me. But I remember everything, and if you're hearing this, it means they haven't found me yet. But they will. They always do. Prince never trusted the industry. He didn't say it often, but when he did, his eyes looked far away, like he was watching something no one else could see. The night he invited me to Paisley Park wasn't out of friendship. It was necessity. He said he needed someone he could trust with video, someone who knew how to stay invisible. I was that person. Not because I was the best, but because I'd already seen too much. Prince led me through an unmarked hallway behind his private studio, down a staircase I didn't know existed. At the bottom was a sealed door with no handle, just a palm reader and a tiny red camera watching us. When it unlocked, I stepped into a bunker 3 stories below the estate. The surveillance room glowed blue. 10 monitors buzzed softly in the dark, each one fixed on a different hidden camera throughout Paisley Park. One was aimed at a velvet-lined hallway, another at a circular windowless chamber with a ceiling fan and a chandelier that didn't belong in any home. That was room 19. Prince stood at the center of the room, sipping tea from a thin porcelain cup. His fingers didn't tremble. The audio guy was already seated, hunched over an analog rig spitting out real-time waveforms. He gave me a nod but said nothing. I could tell by the tension in his shoulders he already knew something I didn't. Prince called it the cleansing, not a protest, not revenge. A ritual of truth, he said, a final act of resistance. This industry was never ours, he murmured. It just learned how to use our faces. I'd worked freelance gigs before, mostly red carpet events, late night edits, occasional NDAs, but nothing like this. This wasn't a job. It was a confession, waiting to happen. Black SUVs arrived one by one, sleek, silent, unmarked, the kind with hidden plates and drivers who didn't make eye contact. The cameras showed them arriving through the east gate, 1, 2, then 4 in a line. The first to arrive was a former child star turned billion-dollar brand. Her smile was gone. She wore oversized pink glasses and didn't speak as she entered. Then came a daytime TV host known for warmth, followed by a platinum-selling R&B singer, and finally, a world-famous preacher with a neck stiff as stone. Their security was stopped at the door by a man with an earpiece and a clipboard. We watched as bodyguards protested, then backed down. A few remained parked down the street, still visible in our wide-lens driveway cam. They were told, Prince said, no shadows allowed, only participants. Room 19 hadn't changed since we wired it. Same rug, same chandelier, same airless silence. But then Diddy arrived. He entered with a gait like he owned the place, but his eyes, they were somewhere else. We watched him on the monitor as he stepped into room 19 and stood still, not in the center, not at the rug, but in front of the north wall, right where we'd embedded the hidden camera. He stared. For 15 seconds, he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't smile. Just stared directly at the camera, though it was impossible he knew it was there. The feed was silent, but I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then, like someone flicked a switch inside him, he blinked rapidly and began humming, skipping in a small circle, running his hand across the wall. Yeah, he muttered. This is the spot. He left the room humming to himself. My hands were still clenched around the zoom toggle. I looked at the audio guy. He was pale. Then Prince spoke again, calm and detached. Relax. Diddy's strange. He goes in and out sometimes. But something about that moment, it didn't feel like he was staring at the wall. It felt like he was staring at us. Prince motioned for me to prep a fresh card. One of the feed units in the dressing wing had corrupted data. I slipped out of the bunker and moved quick through the service halls, keeping close to the shadows. The card I needed to replace was behind a faux heating vent in dressing room B, a chamber that hadn't been used since Prince stopped performing live. I reached the wall and knelt, unscrewing the vent cover. As I pulled out the unit, I heard a click. The door opened. I didn't have time to hide. I ducked behind a rolling garment rack as footsteps clicked across the floor. She entered, a household name, powerful, clean. She stopped in front of the mirror, directly facing me through the fabric of old coats. She adjusted her lip gloss, took a deep breath, and then paused. Her eyes didn't blink. She looked into the mirror and then directly into the rack. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it between my teeth. She didn't speak, just stepped closer and whispered, "You don't see me. I don't see you." Then she left. I stood there frozen for a full minute before finishing the replacement and heading back. When I re-entered the bunker, Prince didn't even look up. "They're gathering," the audio guy said. And sure enough, room 19 was filling up. I watched the monitor as Diddy led them in. The guests formed a circle in silence. No phones, no speaking. Someone entered, holding a small matte black box. Diddy took it reverently, opened the lid, and lifted a single glowing bottle of baby oil above his head like a chalice. Then, from the far hallway, someone entered the room. Someone the cameras hadn't shown yet. Clive Davis. Every face turned to him. He stepped forward with ease, dipped 2 fingers into the oil, and touched Diddy's forehead gently. "You're ready now," he whispered. Then another figure handed Clive a book, thick, ancient, leather-bound with gold etchings that didn't resemble any language I knew. On the spine, the Book of the Damned. And in the low stillness of the room, before any mouth opened, the audio meters in the bunker began to tremble. The chanting hadn't started yet, but something else already had. The air in the surveillance room felt heavier, like it was absorbing what we were watching. On the monitor, Clive Davis stood in the center of room 19, with the Book of the Damned open in his hands. Diddy knelt in front of him, head bowed like a child waiting for a blessing. The baby oil glowed faintly in the candlelight. The guests formed a tight circle around them, lips sealed, eyes glazed. It was silent, except for the faint hiss of the analog gear spitting out raw audio. Then Clive began to speak. At first it sounded like muttering, but the audio rig picked it up differently, a deep, warped timbre that didn't match his vocal signature. The language was unfamiliar, guttural, ancient. The sound engineer and I exchanged a glance. We were both hearing it wrong and yet the same. Prince leaned forward, watching the screen with eyes that didn't blink. "They always start with the naming," he said quietly. "The naming." He nodded. "You give it shape. You give it access." The chanting grew louder, but not from Clive. It was layered now, dozens of voices joining in, low and looping like underwater moans, yet no mouths were moving. I glanced at the waveform. It wasn't peaking. It wasn't even responding to sound in a way I could interpret. It was patternless, but persistent, like the signal itself had a pulse. One of the guests, a recognizable media mogul, began trembling. Another reached for the oil and poured it down the front of her dress. No one laughed. No one looked away. Clive raised the book and read faster. That's when Prince spoke again. "I've seen this before," he said. "Back in '97. Different city, different circle. Same ritual. You recorded it?" "No," he said. "I ran." His eyes didn't move from the screen. "They're not summoning a demon," he continued. "They're feeding one. And the price is always the same." "What price?" He looked at me. "Legacy." Room 19 was fully bathed in candlelight now. Shadows flickered unnaturally against the velvet walls. distorting into elongated figures that moved independently of their hosts. Clive's voice dropped low, a chant that was less language and more vibration. The chandelier began to sway. The audio technician leaned in, fingers flying across the dials, isolating the frequencies. Then he paused. "You hearing this?" I adjusted the secondary analyzer and froze. There was a hum, low, wet, alive. It didn't match any vocal range or audio equipment noise. It pulsed in uneven intervals, not mechanical, not human, like something exhaling from beneath the floorboards. "It's not coming from them," I said. "No," Prince confirmed. "It's coming through them." Clive continued reading. The guests swayed. Some began crying. A woman in a black dress laughed until she collapsed. A man unbuttoned his shirt and began spinning in place, his mouth whispering something I couldn't hear. Their movements were synchronized but unconscious, like dancers in a trance. Diddy stood now, hands raised, shaking. His eyes were closed, but his lips moved along with Clive's, as if he already knew the words. The sound engineer grabbed his headphones and yanked them off. "I can't, something's wrong," he muttered. Blood trickled from his nose. He stumbled back from the console. Prince didn't flinch. "They're giving it form," he whispered. "The more they feel, the more it feeds." And then it happened. The chandelier above room 19 twisted violently, not back and forth, but in a slow, clockwise rotation that accelerated with each turn. No one touched it. One of the guests dropped to her knees. Another removed his shoes and placed I'm outside the circle like a child entering a temple. That's when we saw it. The rug in the center of the room, beneath it, faint outlines of a burned-in circle were becoming visible as oil soaked through the fibers. Symbols, sigils, old, carved into the foundation itself. The room wasn't just being used for the ritual. It had been built for it. Clive closed the book briefly, took the oil, and turned to the nearest guest, a mega producer with permanent sunglasses. He dipped 2 fingers in the oil and touched the man's forehead gently. "Welcome," Clive said. Then he moved to the next. One by one, he anointed them. The sound technician gagged into a waste bin. I stared at the screen, jaw locked. When Clive reached Ellen, she didn't resist. But as the oil touched her head, a single tear rolled down her cheek. No one mentioned it, but I saw it. The hum deepened. Then from upstairs, a sound, a loud, angry pounding at the main hallway door. "Security," I said, snapping my head to the feed. 2 guards, visibly agitated, were trying to get in. One was shouting, the other pounded again. "They were locked out too long," I muttered. But then, they turned toward the hallway leading down to us. Our camera showed them approaching the surveillance wing. The doorknob rattled. My throat dried instantly. Prince raised a hand. "Don't speak." The knob stopped. Silence. I looked at the sound guy. He was holding his breath. A full 10 seconds passed. Then the footsteps retreated. But on the mic by the stairwell, we still heard something breathing. Prince leaned back. It wasn't them. We returned to the feed. The ritual had reached a peak. Clive's hands were slick with oil. The final guest stood trembling in front of him. The sigils on the floor glistened like they were glowing. And then, everything stopped. Clive closed the book. Everyone froze. Then, slowly, they began to leave. No talking, no music, just dripping oil and silent exits. But Clive didn't leave. He stood alone in the room, staring directly at the chandelier. And for 1 second, I swear, he looked directly at our hidden camera. I turned to Prince. "What did we just witness?" He didn't answer. He just whispered, "It's not over. Not yet." The silence after the ritual was louder than any of the chanting. The guests filed out of room 19 as if leaving a church. No laughter, no whispers, just footsteps and the wet sound of oil-soaked clothes brushing against fabric. I watched one man, an actor with a golden reputation, walk barefoot down the hall, leaving a slick trail behind him. Another wiped her hands on a designer jacket, then disappeared into the darkness. No one looked back. Clive remained behind, His gaze locked on the chandelier, unmoving. Then slowly, he closed the Book of the Damned, tucked it under his arm, and turned out the lights. Prince stood. He didn't speak for a long time, just pressed his palms together in front of his mouth and exhaled slowly, like he had been holding that breath the entire night. Then he turned to me. "You didn't flinch," he said. I didn't know what to say. My throat was dry, and my hands were shaking. My body felt numb. "It matters," he continued. "This footage, it matters." He reached into a concealed panel in the wall and pulled out a matte black hard case. One by one, he packed each drive, primary and backup, analog, and digital. The audio tech assisted silently, still pale, still sweating. There was blood on his collar, but he didn't seem to notice. "No cloud," Prince said. "No online trail. Everything we keep offline." When the drives were loaded, Prince locked them into a hidden compartment behind a soundproof wall. "Come back in 3 days," he told me. "We'll clear the rest. We'll finish this." I nodded, but everything in me wanted to run. Still, I owed him. He believed me when no one else had. When I told him about my sister, the one who had tried to make it in the music world, who disappeared after one trip to LA, he didn't look away. He just said, "They take the ones who shine brightest." I drove home that night in silence. No music, no radio. Just the echo of chanting in my head and the look in Clive's eyes as he anointed the final guest. For 3 days, I didn't sleep right. I kept my phone off, covered the mirrors in my apartment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw room 19. Not how it looked, but how it felt. Heavy, like it had a heartbeat. On the third day, I returned to Paisley Park. It was quiet, too quiet. No staff, no lights, no music humming through the walls. The energy was gone. I moved through the halls like I was walking through a mausoleum. Every portrait, every plaque, every relic now looked like a grave marker. I passed through the hallway where we had first watched the guests arrive, now dark and lifeless. The surveillance room was unlocked. Inside, everything looked untouched. Almost. The gear was still there, my backup mic bag, a coil of cables, but the monitors were dark, the console silent, the drives gone. I stepped in carefully, my heartbeat slowing with every step. The air felt thicker, colder. Then I saw it. In the far corner of the room, behind a shelf of unused monitors, stood something I hadn't noticed before. A mirror. It was tall and narrow, framed in black wood, coated in a thin layer of dust, as if it hadn't been moved in years. But it hadn't been there 3 days ago. I was sure of it. I stepped toward it slowly. At first I saw nothing unusual, just my own reflection. Pale, haunted, sleepless. Then something shifted. In the reflection, just behind me, standing at the edge of the room, was a figure. Tall, motionless. Its form was smoke, dark, thick, coiled like vapor, but its eyes were not. The eyes were real. They were watching me. I turned around. Nothing. I looked back into the mirror. Still there. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. My body froze. My breath locked in my lungs. I couldn't lift my feet. Then the figure tilted its head, only slightly, but it moved. That was enough. I bolted out of the room, through the corridor, out the service entrance, and into my car. My keys shook in my hands. I didn't stop driving until I hit the freeway. I never went back. And I never saw Prince again. I never saw Prince again. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't text, didn't call. I told myself he was safe, that he had a plan, that the footage we captured would find its way to the right hands, that the truth would win out. Then on April 21st, 2016, my phone lit up with a breaking news alert. Prince found dead in Paisley Park elevator. Fentanyl overdose suspected. My breath left my body. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen, rereading the headline over and over like repetition would make it mean something else. Prince, meticulous, disciplined, in control of every aspect of his environment, was gone. No questions asked, no investigation, just a slow parade of news anchors nodding gravely and moving on. But I knew what we saw, what we heard, and I knew that the box of hard drives we packed, sealed, and stored was long gone before anyone found him. I tried to move on. I changed my number, moved to a new city, took boring freelance gigs, corporate events, small weddings, anything far from music, far from that world. I kept my head down, stopped asking questions. Then, one night, I saw her face again. Cassie Ventura. She was sitting in a courtroom, voice trembling, testifying under oath. The audio streamed live from someone's phone on a shaky Twitter feed. She talked about the parties, the oil, the silence. She described the guests, the rooms. She said there were recordings, hidden ones. He wasn't the only one filming. She didn't say Paisley Park, didn't say Prince. She didn't have to. My heart stopped. She knew, and if she knew, they did too. That night, I turned off every light in my house, unplugged my router, took the battery out of my phone, triple locked the doors. Every few weeks, something happens. A black SUV I don't recognize idles too long on the corner of my street. An email hits my inbox, no subject, no content, just a timestamp. My dog growls at empty hallways. And sometimes, when I walk past mirrors at night, I catch something just behind me. Not my reflection, something else. I know how it sounds. I know how it reads. But I also know what I heard in that room. That hum, that voice beneath the chanting, that presence that was never in the room, but somehow filled it. And I know they killed Prince for trying to expose it. And I know I'm next. So if you're hearing this, if this story is still up, it means they haven't found me yet. But they will. They always do. And when they do, this tape might be the only thing left. If you want to help me, if you believe me, there's a link pinned in the comments.